A bit about your background, where you're originally from, and what was it like?
Okay. My background, where I'm from, I grew up in Tampa Bay, Florida, and when I was 22, I decided to see the world, and I moved up to New York, and it has been a very demonic experience. I've just been battling the forces of evil every day. This socialist society that I've found myself in, it's terrifying every waking moment.
It's something to look forward to.
Every day is a new misadventure. Yes.
All right, so I was born in, it was a summer night in Paterson, New Jersey. The year was 1979, July 11th. And yeah, so I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, also known as Silk City. It was predominantly Italians and Italian Americans were in the area, but with time, a lot of immigrants from Latin America moved in. And yeah, it became very urban, and yeah, that's where I grew up. It became really rough. It's kind of considered, like a lot of rappers are from there.
Are they?
Yeah. We got a lot of people from hip hop that kind of came out from Patterson, and yeah, it was a rough place to live. But I was fortunate because from time to time, our family would always go to Colombia because my parents are Colombian, and so I got to see the rest of the world and saw where, I realized that Patterson wasn't the center of the world, as most people in urban areas feel that, this is.
Yeah, I when people ask me where I'm from, I don't really have a really good answer. My father was a former Air Force pilot, and when I came around, he decided to switch to commercial aviation, presumably much more stable and everything. However, while many families in commercial aviation tend to stay in one place and everything, a couple things were happening. One, both my parents grew up in like the same house forever, right? Big families, same house. And they were of a mindset of they wanted to go around the world and see things and so forth. So we did a lot of traveling, especially when we were on commercial. He flew for Pan Am, one of the first black pilots in Pan Am. And as a result, at some point, he decided that, we move around from time to time. So I did Montessori school through first grade in suburban Maryland. And then we moved to Berlin, Germany. For second through middle of fifth, and then moved to Jackson, Mississippi, because we'd been in Berlin, Germany for so long that my mother was getting kind of homesick. I felt like we were getting detached from the family, and her family being in Mississippi, we moved to Jackson, Mississippi. Then Pan Am had some issues with basically closed down their New Orleans hub where he was based out of. So we never actually sold the house in Maryland. So we went back to that house in Maryland and so forth. So like every 3 or 4 years, there's been a change or a shift. So there's no one house.
I was born and raised in Southeast Michigan. My dad was an experimental engineer at General Motors for over 30 years. So much of my time growing up, he was working there. My mom had transitioned. She worked in retail for many years at Dayton Hudson's or back in the day, loss prevention. And as you can expect, growing up with 3 older sisters, I was naturally their doll, their model to try on clothes, any of those things that you would expect with girls and, a baby brother. We had a boat growing up, so a 35-foot Chris Craft on Lake St. Clair. So yeah, we spent a lot of weekends out there as a family. We really enjoyed much of that Michigan has to offer, from boating and camping and, the natural beauty that really, is all things Michigan?
So I grew up in Diamond Bar, California. It's just outside of LA County, and I'm the son of immigrants. I'm first generation American, and both of my parents immigrated from Colombia when they were around 25. So yeah, I mean, California kid living the dream in New York City.
Wow, you're the second one of our guests whose parents are both from Colombia. And he's the first generation. So that's kind of interesting. Anything else you'd like to tell about your background?
Both my parents they went to university in Colombia, but they had to start over when they came to the United States. So they took 9 classes, going to learn English while trying to make it in a engineering career and trying to find their way in the States, raising some kids and, making their way.
So, I have this little thing that I say. Born in Chicago, raised in Iowa, seasoned in LA, and now New York flavored.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. What was it like in Iowa?
Iowa was actually very supportive. So I started coming out at 15. And a funny story is that I came out to my best friend since kindergarten last. We're still best friends. And basically what happened is I had to be sat down and spoken for. And at the end of it he says, yeah, so?
You had to be spoken for?
Like, one of my friends delivered my little speech for me.
Oh, okay. And he was not surprised or shocked, or he just took it in stride?
He just took it in stride. And, now, 25 years later, we're still best friends.
I grew up in Beijing, China. So I came to this country 20 years ago.
20?
Yeah, so I've been in the United States for 20 years now, but, I spent a pretty big chunk of my life in China. That's where I grew up. And what was that like? In China?
Yeah.
It was a very interesting time. When I was born, the country was still very poor. I remember at that time, my parents and I have an older brother, 4 of us just live in one single room.
Really?
Yeah, we don't have, just one single room. And then it's a shared bathroom and with the whole floor, the building has, the floor has, one floor may have maybe 20 families. Then we have a shared bathroom with multiple, sinks and stuff like that. And then our kitchen was just this little stove outside on the hallway. So people every family just cooked there, in the hallway.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so that was that. I mean, when I grew up, but then that China changed, it opened up and has more development and got capital investment from the West and became richer and richer, and it's changed a lot since that time.
And have you been back?
Yeah, I've been back a few times in last 10 years, and I went back to see the Beijing Olympics in 2008.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
The country and the city had changed so much. It's so dramatic. I think that I heard that the last 20, 30 years was one of the biggest human development success story, because there are several 100 million people came out of poverty in China. So yeah.
Well, Tim, I was originally born in Belgium. That's Western Europe, just in the middle of above France, underneath the Netherlands, in a small town called Liedekerke, which is 20 miles west from Brussels. Dutch-speaking little community, 10,000 people live there. It was nice growing up. Small town. We were playing on the streets all summer. No stress of the big city. We didn't even know what big cities were. It was pretty cool living up there.
So I was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1973, and so being from Brooklyn in those days, I always tell people I'm from Brooklyn before it was cool. So I grew up during the crack epidemic, and it was like really interesting times, believe it or not. Unfortunately, like during that time, because Brooklyn was a different beast back in those days, I've had not hundreds, but I really literally have had dozens of friends who've died from gun violence during the 80s and 90s. Sometimes I talk to millennials and like migrants. I have a word might offend some people. I call them colonizers. But I talk to like people who are new to New York today and don't really know the real spirit of New York, and it's they don't get what New York was like.